Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Masri. On this episode, I interviewed my cousin, Andrew Eldebs, who is a land developer, and we talked about a recent project that he got into, which was in Dunnville, Ontario. It was actually a piece of land that had a former train track on it. So he talks about the process of converting this piece of land into developable land where they have several homes that are going to be built there in the near future. We talked about bottlenecks in land development in general. Why does it take so long to break ground and to move forward? And we also talked about how he finds opportunities in addition to the due diligence that's required once he has a property under contract. And finally, we touched on some creative solutions, creative ways to make deals work because it's a competitive industry just like real estate is in general. So I think if you're interested in land development, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. And if you do like it, I ask you to share it with a friend or family member, and then also make sure to leave us a review. And again, if you want to connect with me, there are multiple ways to do that. You can just go to welloff.ca and then you can book a call, or feel free to reach out to me by email. I hope you'll enjoy the episode. I'm here with Andrew Eldebs. Andrew's actually my cousin, but also a land developer. And today we are going to talk a bit about some recent projects that he's had. We also, for the first time, I poured a shot because this is Andrew's first podcast, so he's a little bit nervous. So I think we're going to start off by taking a shot and maybe loosen up a little bit. So here you go. Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks, George. Cheers.
Okay. That was grappa. I haven't had grappa in a while.
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
Feels like I'm on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, so Andrew, welcome. It's nice having you here. Why don't we just dive... Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you what I normally ask guests, which is tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and maybe one or two things you remember.
Yeah, sure. Good question. Childhood, I was born in Toronto. I think when I was about a year or 2 years old, my parents moved back to Lebanon. My dad's got a recycling company in Lebanon with his siblings, so moved to Lebanon for about a year. The economic situation wasn't very good there, so came back to Mississauga at the time. We lived in the same apartment building there. And then most of my life I grew up in Brampton, but a lot of good memories with, we got a big family, as you know, so a lot of good memories.
I forgot that you guys moved. I remember I was really sad as a kid when I knew you guys were moving away because we were all so close. We used to hang out all the time. Yeah. Okay, so let's dive in. I know you also invest in real estate, like you have had rentals and things like that, but your focus has been on land development. So you graduated from the University of Guelph. I'm kind of telling your story here a little bit because I know it. And then you started working for a company. What was it again? Which company was it?
Yeah, at a university, I worked for a construction company called MMM Group, or it's an engineering company, actually.
Not that, the land developer.
WSP now, and then I moved over to Mattamy Homes.
There you go. Yeah. Mattamy Homes is what I was thinking about. So you started off there. So you gained some experience doing that. And then I know that you started looking for, at some point, you also started looking for deals yourself. And then we looked at something a few years ago in Dunnville. And that was, I believe, like it was a piece of land that had a train track on it in the past. Mm-hmm. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that project? When did you buy it, and what's happening with it now?
Yeah, so after Mattamy, I moved over. I was at Mattamy for a little while.
Get a little closer.
Moved over to Branthaven, and in 2019, like you said, we found a parcel. It was on the market at the time in Dunnville. It's about just over an acre, 1.1 acres. Mm-hmm. It's an irregular parcel. It was owned by the county in the past, and historically there was a railroad that ran through it. But we put it under contract, did our due diligence on it, determined what the expected remediation costs were for the cleanup of that historical railway. Just the contaminants that resulted as of that use, and we purchased the property, and currently, going through the development application process, nearing draft plan approval. Hopefully, should be over the next few months. We should get draft planning and rezoning approval. and hoping to commence construction on that site either late this year or early next year.
Okay. So what are some of the things you had to go through? Because I don't think you were able to build on it when you first bought it. Like it wasn't ready immediately for construction. So what are some of the things you've had to do to prepare the land for construction?
Yeah, so the site, was the zoning of the site when we bought it. It was, zoned just to allow basically large single detached lots, and very large, like in terms of frontage, semi-detached lots. So we had a certain amount of yield that we needed to get onto the site in order to make it, in order to make the project feasible. So we went in for a rezoning application to rezone the property to allow still singles and semis and townhouses now, essentially to allow a higher density form of development that would allow us to achieve that yield that we needed to make the project worthwhile. So we filed the development application. I actually went through a lot of the process myself with the county, which in hindsight, perhaps we should have just filed the development application right away. But we filed the development application, rezoning and draft plan of subdivision, and the process with municipal approvals. Typically, when you file, or first before you file, you go through what's called a formal consultation. So you submit a development concept to the county, and you provide your proposal to them. And they provide feedback on that. With all the county's departments are at that meeting, and they provide feedback. And you take that feedback, you adjust the application, and then at that point you file the application formally with all of the required studies, geotechnical, environmental, tree protection plans, functional servicing reports, all that stuff. So and then once you file, it goes through a public process whereby the neighbors within a certain radius of the area of the development application, they have the opportunity to provide commentary on the application and to voice their concerns. And through that process, we work with the municipality and with the neighbors to find solutions to address their concerns where we're able to and where warranted, and adjust our application accordingly. And we're just in the process now, of resubmitting the application. And we've had very detailed discussions with the county about servicing requirements for the site. We've kind of had a lot of obstacles and to face, but we've worked it out with the county, come to kind of an agreement in principle with respect to what the final approvable draft plan of subdivision looks like. So I expect to refile the application, next week, and hopefully get approval. It goes to council after that. So staff, if they're in support of the application, their manager of planning there writes a report, either supporting application or denying it. In this case, we're expecting them to support it, just based on our discussions, and then it goes to the municipal council for a vote. And at that point, if it's approved, we're provided with conditions of draft plan approval and of zoning approval. We have to go through a detailed engineering design process to kind of detail the design of the subdivision and ensure that everything works kind of at a very detailed level. And once you got your engineering approvals and your subdivision agreement, you can start grading the site. You can start servicing the site.
Basically break ground.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can break ground.
Yeah. So what have been some of the bottlenecks? Because you bought this piece of property a couple years ago. Do you remember what year it was that you bought it?
Yeah, we bought it in 2019.
2019. So that's basically around 3 years now.
Yeah.
What's been some of the things that have held you back from moving forward? Because sometimes people may not understand how long it takes to develop a site, and that's also part of the reason that we have such a shortage in housing now. Just the how long it takes to break ground and to start construction.
Yeah. So, great question. So at the time that I bought the property, I was employed full time with a land developer. So it was really, the challenge. There's a challenge there just to balance the obligations, which land development is a very very busy industry, and so there's always fires to put out and things like that. So obviously that played a role in kind of how long it's taken. Now that I've gone out on my own and I can really focus more on our projects, things have gone a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So that's one of the points. But in hindsight, with larger development projects, this development project is only 9 units, which, based on the scale that I'm used to doing with these larger developers, is pretty small. But with these smaller development projects, the soft costs of the project, so your consulting fees, and your fees for creating your reports and things like that, those soft costs are very significant on the project. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do, whereas typically on the large projects we really push right away once we buy the property, we proceed with filing development applications, and just hit the ground running right away. What I try to do is really steer that myself and get to a point with the municipality where we have an agreement in principle with respect to the to the proposal. But I found that that process, in doing that, although it might have saved us some soft costs, it really extended the timeline for this development. And there's, municipalities have legislative timelines once you file an application formally to approve it or make a decision on it. And again, in hindsight, I would have filed the application right away, and kind of went through the process rather than trying to spearhead it myself.
Got it. Okay. So I know also at one point you were looking at putting more units on this piece of land. Like you had this design, I forget how many, but it was more than 9. I know that for sure. What was the reason that you were forced to reduce it down to just 9 units?
Yeah, good question. So, we went through so many different development proposals. Like the site's very irregular. You represented us on the purchase, so you remember that. You remember how it looks, but it's a very irregular site. So we've gone through many different variations with respect to the concept plan. And our original proposal was essentially a condo laneway with parcels of tied land, so a common element condominium. At that point, we had 14 units proposed on the property. The challenge with that was just, it's hard to kind of explain it because we don't have a picture in front of us, but the challenge with it was with respect to access, and the laneway was essentially dead-ended. Municipality needed a turnaround. And so we ended up finding that that we could still make the project work comfortably with proposing a subdivision rather than a condominium. Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify, so what they needed was, I think from what I remember, they needed a fire truck to be able to go through and turn around comfortably, and with the way the design was, that wasn't possible.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they needed a fire truck to go into be able to turn around within the condo laneway, and with the design. Although, we kind of accommodated their requests, and this was all part of the process that we were talking about, why it took so long. We went down that path in a lot of detail, and we felt that the county was starting to warm up to it. We showed them, based on the OBC guidelines, based on engineering standards, that a fire truck can comfortably circulate. But at the end of the day, they chose, not to support that plan, so we had to revise it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, so that's the Dunnville project. Good luck with that. Hopefully, you get your approval this year and you can break ground and whatever. I'm interested to see how that ends up. What are you normally looking for? Because I know like your specialty is finding these opportunities, finding pieces of land that you can develop. What is it that you look for, and how do you evaluate these opportunities?
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into evaluating a land opportunity. So first and foremost, obviously, is does it make sense in terms of the purchase price when you're buying the property? Once you get once you've been working in land acquisitions and you've acquired a certain amount of land, the same as, when you're dealing with buying a house, you can really tell right away whether something is worth looking into or not. So just the purchase price.
Is that like per acre, price per acre? Is that something that you would normally look at, or is there something else that would tell you whether right off the bat whether it's good or not? Yeah,
exactly. So price per developable acre, because you got gross acreage, which includes all of your environmental areas, the areas that are protected. We call them protected. We call them natural heritage. They're protected by conservation authorities and municipalities, so you can't develop on those areas, and in fact you need to protect them, which is fine. But we look at really price per developable acre, or another metric that we use is price per foot of frontage. In the case where you're talking about low density development, like single detached and townhouse homes, where you got frontage on a street. So what is the cost per foot? In terms of your raw land cost, how much yield do I expect I'm going to get out of this? How many feet of frontage do I expect I'm going to get when I run all the roads through and things like that? How much is it going to cost me to service? And you can kind of work backwards from your construction cost down to a land cost and figure out what is a feasible land price. But just in short, you can pretty quickly tell whether or not a project is worth looking into based on the purchase price, the price per net developable acre specifically, and then also once you do, I always do pre-due diligence on a property before we submit an offer. So I'll look into, for example, it's all really accessible information. Look into the official plan designation, the current zoning, figure out what's around the property, just looking at aerials. Determine whether or not the proposal that we would put onto the property is likely to be supported by council. What's the risk associated with that? Because there's planning risks when you are undergoing a development application. And a big piece of the puzzle is the engineering, which is really whether or not you have a satisfactory stormwater outlet. These developments need to be serviced by stormwater. So when it rains, you're paving all these roads. Currently, it's a farm field, for example, and so the water infiltrates into the ground depending on your soil type. But when you pave it all and you've got a lot less ground, you've got a lot less grass and soil. You're not talking about pavement, so the water runs off. So you need to control that additional water that your development is causing. So you do that by managing, you can create a stormwater management pond. And so we evaluate whether or not there's a stormwater outlet somewhere for the stormwater management pond to outlet to. And we look at, just in the pre-due diligence stage and in detail, we look at also whether or not there's an outlet for sanitary, and whether or not the water supply is sufficient to accommodate the development.
Sure. So you have to do like quite a bit of due diligence. Are you doing all that yourself when you're looking at these properties? Like, how do you know? This sounds like an engineering question, or like, I don't know, like some sort of geotechnical question. How do you know all these things?
Well, just having worked in the industry for a long, I'm an engineer by trade, so I think it definitely, in school, as you mentioned before, I did environmental engineering. So just through my schooling, I think it helps me to be able to understand certain facets of the industry and to wrap my head around things perhaps a little quicker.
Yeah.
And so I had that background, which definitely helped out. I was blessed to have very good mentors in the past, and still mentors that I talk to today that have allowed me to develop technically my technical skills. So that definitely plays a role. But what was your question again? I think the graphic just hit me.
I was feeling it a little bit too, I'll be honest. Okay, I guess my question is, like, do most developers have somebody that specializes in identifying these things, like the stormwater stuff and whatever, or is that usually the land acquisition specialist? Yeah,
so as a developer, we have a good knowledge of kind of, we know a bit about everything, I guess you can say, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we seek consultants who can provide more detailed studies when it comes to actually doing, for example, the geotechnical studies, the environmental studies, the when you really drill down into the engineering due diligence, we'll retain consultants to do that work for us. But the pre-due diligence, really, I do myself. Typically, a developer will have a land acquisition manager who should know enough to be able to identify whether a property is worth looking at. Because through the due diligence process, there's if you want to do due diligence properly, you need to. It's an investment. It's a significant investment. Like once you tie up a property, you usually have we ask for a due diligence period with the vendor, so typically 90 days to get everything we need to get done, and in that 90 days, we'll invest into doing the phase 1 environmental, phase 2 environmental if we need to. Mm-hmm. The geotechnical study is important to know that the soil is sufficient to support the structures that you intend to build on the property. And so those costs can amount easily to $15,000 to $20,000. So it's important to just be able to identify, like I said, that the property's worth that investment just from the get-go.
So are you the one who's taking on that risk, or is there a way for you to mitigate that risk a little bit by putting some of that cost onto the seller, or creative ways to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, good point. Like we certainly, if it's beneficial to the seller in some ways to take on that cost. So typically, I'll to ask the seller if they are willing to pay for the phase 1 environmental, and if they are, if we, in the event that we walk away from the property, they'll have that phase 1 environmental report in hand. If they need to sell it to somebody else, so they can just provide that right from the get-go. So it's beneficial to them, and certainly, we would seek that from the seller. Typically, the seller will require you, at least in my experience, the seller bears no cost burden as it relates to the due diligence. But I've done it in the past whereby either we've shared the cost of the work with the seller, or they've taken on the full cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some creative ways that you've been able to get these properties under contract? Because obviously, like land development, there's more room for creativity typically because there aren't as many people looking for land. So can you give us examples of creative ways that you've been able to get properties under contract, or certain clauses that help you as a developer?
Yeah, so when you put a land under contract, like you do with a home, right? You'll typically, probably not in this market anymore, mm-hmm. Or not if you want to buy a good amount of houses anyways, but you'll typically, when you buy a house, you'll put a 5-day financing condition, for example. But when you buy land, our condition is typically 90 days to get done what we need to get done, all that due diligence that we talked about. So we put it under contract. We provide a deposit, whatever that might be, and we have 90 days to do the due diligence. At our sole and absolute discretion, we can walk away from the property if we don't deem it to be feasible for our purposes and for what we propose on it. And if we do walk away at the end of the 90 days, like you do with a house, if you don't waive your financing condition, we walk away and take, get our deposit back. So it's, I guess, little risk, I think, when it comes to purchasing land. And yeah, I think really that's, there's not much, I wouldn't say there's much of a secret to it.
Well, there's like an option to buy, for example.
Right.
Yeah, like things like that. You've mentioned this to me in the past. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, good point. So, what I've done in the past is in certain deals, you need to get a bit more creative. They're a little bit less straightforward. So, for example, we're working on a property right now where there's only about 12 or 13, the property in total is about 120 acres. There's only about 12 acres of it in the urban boundary. So only about 12 acres of it is slated for development. And in Ontario, you can't legally sell a piece of your property without severing it first. So what we've done with the vendor is we've put together essentially an option agreement. And in that option agreement, what it says is we have a certain period of time to purchase the property, the 12 acres that we intend to sever at an agreed upon purchase price. And in that period of time, we pursue development applications. We pursue the severance application at our cost. And once the severance application is approved and the property severed, it'll be deeded to us, and we close on the property. So if we don't, hypothetically, if we don't succeed to sever off the property, if we don't succeed to sever off the property, it would essentially, we would just walk away from the deal. And we're protected just because we've registered the option agreement on title to the lands, so we've protected ourselves in that regard. So anybody who purchased the property would know that that agreement is on title and that we have an interest secured in the 12 acres or so in the property.
Okay, cool. So basically, an option to purchase means that you have the property under contract. You can do certain things during that period of time, and then at the end of it, you have the right to buy the property at a predetermined price.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's similar to like a rent to own type of thing. Not exactly, but like kind of similar to that. Okay, so anything you're excited about? Any projects coming up that you're excited to work on? Anything of that sort?
Yeah, I mean, I've got. I'm working on a lot. I've been very busy, just really trying to source land opportunities. And as you know, I started my business in May, my company. So it's been things have. I've established some systems since then, and I've been blessed to be able to be busy. There's never a dull moment. But really, what my focus on is right now is to source land development opportunities, and to figure out how we can acquire them. So yeah, just been working on that.
Can you tell us a little bit about Fill Maps?
Yeah. Okay. So Fill Maps is a software that I co-founded with my partner who I did engineering with at University of Guelph, and I came up with a concept. It's essentially a soil exchange platform, an online soil exchange platform, and the idea behind it is like in development and construction. Typically, you run into when you're grading lands, when you get to where you're breaking ground. A lot of the time you run into the situation where either you need to take soil off of your site, you need to export it from your site, or you need to bring soil into your site. So presently, or at least until Fill Maps was brought to the market, the process of finding sites to exchange soil with was not transparent. So really you had to know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody who needs the soil that you have, or who has the soil that you need. And it's also, like, to kind of add to the equation, the province has become very stringent. They've released very stringent standards. There's an regulation called OREG 40619, which was just enacted earlier this year, or part of it was just enacted earlier this year. But essentially the standards that you have to abide by in order to get rid of soil from your property or to bring soil into your property have become very strict. And you need to do a lot of testing whenever you get rid of soil or bring it in. So we found the need in the market for a more transparent way to find sites to exchange soil. So, for example, if you were currently, if you were a developer in the past, I should say, if you were a developer and you need to get rid of 50,000 cubic meters of soil, which is 5,000 truckloads, and you need to get rid of it fast. Well, the only way to find a place to get rid of that soil is just by knowing somebody or knowing somebody who knows somebody. So, and then a lot also kind of plays into it is your contractor will give you a flat rate to get rid of that soil, but your contractor could have possibly worked in kind of like a fee to broker that transaction. Yeah, so with Fill Maps, you could log on to this platform, the online platform, create an account, and for free, you can post a listing. We call it just you create a listing. So you can post a site. If you have soil, for example, you can post what type of soil you have, the quality of that soil, because it's a very regulated industry. Soil is just soil to a lot of people, but it's very precise in the construction industry. So you post the soil quality, what type of soil you have, and it's basically like I'd describe it as a realtor.ca for soil. And so it's just made the process of exchanging soil that much more transparent. Anyone can log on, any contractor, developer can log on, figure out where they're going to take their soil, and ultimately the goal of it is to reduce costs for the industry.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. That's pretty cool, because I know you started this from nothing. Like, it was just a concept that you thought of, and then now it's become something that's active and live. So it's interesting to see that. I guess to finish things off, do you want to just share what services you provide and how people can reach you?
Yeah. So, if anybody ever has a development project, for example, that's of a scale that I'm looking for, I kind of try to be picky about the projects that I work with, and I try to, from my project in Dunnville, for example, I'm trying to work on projects of a bit more scale. So if anyone has a project of a certain scale, like say 5 acres development, let's put a minimum there, then feel free, if you need help, to reach out to me. I'm happy to consult on it if you would need that service, or alternatively, we can work on it together in some way, shape, or form. And if you wanted to contact me, feel free to log on. You can go onto my website, www.landscoutinvestments.com, and just fill out the contact form there, and it'll go to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrew, thanks for coming by today and for sharing a little bit about land development and taking a shot of grappa.
Thanks, George.
I look forward to seeing you again soon. Good luck with all of your projects.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Your support is truly appreciated. And if you can share this with a friend or family member that might benefit from the information, remember, our goal is to motivate and inspire others to take action and to build wealth and to become well off. Enjoy the rest of your day.